a quick story about my wife, Ernestine, and me. 1 year ago this week, I caught COVID. Of course, my wife, Ernestine, was horrified. Her worst nightmare is catching COVID. She has not caught it to this moment. She has been on a 3-year mission to avoid COVID. She still often wears a mask, and she still will not eat inside of a restaurant. And I love her for all of the above. I have never known this woman to even have a cold. I'm going to knock on wood for her. Even have a cold. 17 years, no colds. So when I caught COVID, you can imagine what happened at my house. I was quarantined in the office bedroom that I used during the week. I mean, I was locked down. I was treated like a leper. She set my meals out on the floor outside my door, then knocked and ran. And my beloved daughter, Hazel, our 6-year-old Maltese, was strictly off limits. No way was I going to see or touch or be in the force field of my Hazel. I was let out of my quarantine quarters only to do Undisputed every morning at 6:30 a.m. here in LA. That was from my remote setup at home. Ernestine did help mic me up for the show. She did turn on all the equipment for me, but that was while wearing double masks and a shield and gloves. I did not miss a show. So it was on Tuesday night that I was scribbling away, creating my podcast while lying in bed. My podcast to be taped on Wednesday, the next day, when I heard my Ernestine cry out and yell, "Oh my God, I cut my finger off." She was in the kitchen, which is just right around the corner from my office bedroom quarantine chamber, just right around the corner, so I could clearly hear her. Obviously, I was highly contagious. And I was pretty sure that Ernestine at that moment was not wearing a mask. But she had just cut her finger off. I am thrown into a state of panic. I just plunged and I bolted out the door and into the kitchen, where all I could see was blood. Trust me, no exaggeration, blood was everywhere, all over the cabinet and all over the kitchen floor. Blood everywhere. For a second, I waited for Ernestine to yell, "Get back in your room." But she already had a bunch of blood-soaked paper towels wrapped around her hand. I tried to reassure it's going to be all right. I frantically scanned for her finger on the floor or somewhere on the cabinet or in the sink. I had no idea. She was white as a sheet, and she was clearly in some shock. Remember, she doesn't get sick. She doesn't get badly hurt. She's not used to that sort of thing happening. But I saw no detached finger. I couldn't tell exactly how badly hurt she was. And I must tell you, I was pretty shook up myself. So in panic, I said, hang on. And I ran for my phone. By now, Hazel was just joyously barking her brains out because Dad had come out to play. "No, Hazel, no, calm down. Your mom is hurt." So I thumbed through my contacts for our doctor's cell phone. I called it, and would you believe he answered? He like answered on the second ring. It was impossible. He answered his cell phone. I told Dr. Cole that Ernestine thinks she just cut her finger off. I'm not sure what's happening. And he very calmly said he would call the emergency room at St. John's Hospital and that they would be waiting for her when she arrived. But then it dawned on me, I can't go to the hospital. I have COVID. I can't do that to those people. So I frantically called Ernestine's sister Joyce, who lives, 10, 15 minutes from us. And boom, she said, I'm on my way. Then out onto the carpeted hall, outside of the kitchen, came Ernestine, still pretty panicky, but saying, you got to help me put my Ugg boots on so I can go to the hospital. So I got down on a knee and I tried to push one of her boots up onto her foot. And as she was holding on for dear life to her blood-soaked paper towels, I think by then she had some kind of towel on it, blood-soaked. She lost her balance and she fell down onto the carpet and blood went everywhere, everywhere. By this point, I'm starting to worry about bleeding to death. But by then, I was pretty sure she hadn't cut her finger off. But there was so much blood that even though I tried to glance at, she opened it up for a second, I tried to glance, it was just so much blood, I couldn't see anything. I couldn't make out what had actually happened. In her shock, she said she had done it with one of those rolling pizza cutters. And she tried to cut one of those little Weight Watcher pizzas, the ones that roll and cut. That's what she said she had done. I couldn't have quite envisioned it, but the truth was that wasn't how she did it. She was just in shock. So I helped her out the door, down the steps to Joyce's car, and they took off. This is probably 9 p.m. out here in LA. Again, I have to be up by 2 a.m. There was obviously no way I was going to sleep, so I continued to prep the podcast, very distracted. Joyce called about 9:30, said Ernestine was with a nurse who said that he had seen worse than this cut. Made me feel a little better. Ernestine called me maybe 10:30-ish to say doctor had stitched up her hand. It required 7 stitches, that she had nicked an artery, which was extremely dangerous, which had caused so much blood to spurt. But the cut was more across sort of the webbing, I think it was her left hand, across the webbing and down into her palm, and her finger was intact. Again, she was in shock. So I finally went to sleep around 11-ish to get up at 2, and Hazel was going to have it no other way. She slept with me. COVID be damned. When I got up at 2, I was stunned to find that Ernestine and Joyce had come back, and for therapy, they had cleaned up every last drop of blood while I was sleeping. But it wasn't until later that Ernestine came to the realization it wasn't the pizza cutter that did her in. She was trying to cut the plastic wrapping around the top of some kind of spice jar. It was wrapped in plastic, so she's trying to use the scissors to cut it, and the scissors predictably had slipped right into her hand. I get a shiver just thinking about it, but I guess all was well that ended well. Ernestine, the warrior that she is, did not catch COVID from me. Neither, to my knowledge, did Hazel. The cut healed fairly well without much of a scar. But if you want to know the truth, this is the kind of thing that happens on almost a nightly basis in the Bayless household. You may or may not remember the old TV series, the old sitcom, I Love Lucy, starring Lucille Ball as Lucy Ricardo. It's always been Ernestine's favorite because if you know how zany and crazy Lucy could be on I Love Lucy, that's my life with Ernestine. I love Ernestine. I hope you enjoyed that video. You ready for more? Make sure you click that subscribe button for all the exclusive content from the Skip Bayless Show. And don't forget to check out the full episode of the show wherever you get your podcasts by clicking the link in the description.